Hello everyone, my name is Aristotle and I'm here with the Interactive and Immersive AHQ. In this tutorial, we're going to be covering projection mapping setups as well as IMAG FX using notch blocks within Pixera. And at this point, and on behalf of the AHQ, I'd like to thank Pixera for sponsoring this series of videos. So let's get started. First thing we need to do is add a screen within our setup. So let's go in the Screens tab and select the generic flat screen, drag it and drop it within our canvas. By clicking on it, I'm seeing all the parameters that affect it. So in my imaginary setup, my screen is 12 meters wide by 3 meters high. And we can see it going beyond the ground now, so I'll just drag it and move it just above. We also see the resolution of the canvas automatically being calculated by Pixera. I believe this is based on the template values for the generic flat screen, but I can adjust it to whatever I see fit. So I want it to be 3840 pixels wide, as I don't want the resolution to exceed a 4K texture. And by tapping that, Pixera gives me automatically the vertical pixels based on the aspect ratio of the screen. And next thing we need to do is add the projectors. So we'll go in the Mapping tab, where we see an extensive list of projector manufacturers. And I'll just find the Panasonic brand over here. And I'll select the projector I want, which is the Z870. In fact, I can search here. And drag it and drop it within our editor. So here it is. We instantly see the field of view of the projector. And as it is, we see that this needs to be moved way back in order to cover the whole height of the canvas. There's no chance we're going to cover the whole of the canvas with one. It will need to be too far and we'll lose too much resolution. But as it stands, it will need to be moved way back for it to cover the full height. And we can address that by choosing a different lens. And luckily, Pixera comes with a lens library as well. So I can go here and select a wider lens, such as this one, and instantly we see the field of view changing. Now, in my calculations, as we have a 3840 pixels wide texture and our projectors are only HD, we'd need 3 projectors to cover the full width. And I'd like Pixera to find their positions automatically. So how we do that? If I click on the projector and then hit the automatic transform selected objects option, we see a menu with 3 different options here. Like the first one is the align option, which aligns the projectors in a linear manner, like we need to do today. The distribute option, which does distribute the projectors either linearly, circularly, between objects, or along an existing object, like in the case of a curved surface, for example. Or the offset option, which offsets its instance based on our direction. So you can do complicated rotations and stuff. But today we're going to use the simplest option of them all. And you can see that as I have a single number, the single projector setup here, it moved the projector way back. But I want 3 projectors, as we said earlier. And instantly Pixera finds the correct position for them to be. Not only finds the position, but it also adjusted the rotation based on the height. The height is given within the Align Details menu. I had already set this up to be 4 meters, but if I am to deselect it, you can see that the projectors automatically move to point straight towards the surface. So let's move it back to 4 meters, as I want my projectors to be hidden from the point of view of the audience. And we also have a bunch of other interesting options here. Like, first of all, we can choose to either maximize the overlap, and that way Pixera automatically calculates the maximum overlap for this setup, or we can have a predefined overlap, something like 15% would be a nice one to have as a minimum. But let's stick with maximize overlap. And just click apply. And we're done with positioning our projectors. Now, this is very helpful, as it would allow us to communicate with the production team about where we need the projectors to be, and have everything prepared before we go on site. There's obviously some minor adjustments that need to be done when we do arrive on site, but this makes sure that we are as prepared as possible. And in fact, you can see that the warping is already starting to happen here. So we start with a basis that is as close to the final result as possible. So not only we get all that, but we can also adjust for the vertical lens shift and horizontal lens shift. We can adjust the color correction, the lens distortion correction, and things like that. So a lot of options to play with when the actual installation happens. Another thing I want to do is change the way Pixera does the alignment at the moment, and make it so it's perspective aligned. So that way we can see the points grabbing the distortion of the texture. And when I do go on site, I can add as many points as I want and warp this texture as needed. I can add Bezier curves and anything that you would imagine a tool like that would have. So let's carry on with adjusting all the projectors to have this alignment option. Perfect. Now, the white lines that you see here represent the overlap between the projectors. And normally, when we have overlap between the projections, we get higher brightness, as you can imagine, as two projectors are reaching the same point in the canvas. To address that, what we do normally is implement the technique called soft edge, where we add a gradient between the two projectors, so the brightness remains as constant as possible. Pixera makes this easy for us again, as we can click this button here on the soft edge tab and click this button here, generate soft edge. The soft edge gradient is automatically calculated for all our projectors. Excellent. So we're done with positioning our setups, positioning our projectors, excuse me. And now I'd like to set up the outputs. And to do that, I want to go to the Live tab, where I find my local machine. And under the GPU, we see all the outputs. Now, in this imaginary use case, I plan to use my laptop as a media server in this event. So I will only have one GPU output. So I need to find a way to split one 4K output into 3 HD ones. And I plan to use a data bus device for that, which does exactly that. But in order for that to happen, we need to position the individual projector feeds in a grid manner within the texture that comes out of the single output of the GPU. And to do that, I can select this output here, say that this is the output of the laptop, and select this option here, is output aggregate, which was already selected because I had done a test before, but it normally looks like that. And by selecting it, you divide the canvas coming out of this output into how many rows and columns you like. Normally, this would be a 2x2 thing where we have 2 rows with 2 rectangular textures each. And then I need to assign each portion of that texture to each projector. So how do we do that?
Hey there, sorry to pause the video, but I wanted to share something with you real quick. Right now, you can get 50% off the Interactive and Immersive HQ Pro. The HQ Pro is the only comprehensive educational resource and community of its kind for immersive design, interactive tech, and touch designer professionals. We have over 200 hours of video trainings, a private community where Matthew Reagan, myself, and our other teachers answer your questions daily, and we've just launched the first mini degree program for the interactive tech and immersive media industry. If that sounds interesting, click the link in the description to learn more about the Interactive and Immersive HQ Pro and join now for 50% off.
I'll select the first one and select the output that matches the one we want, which in our use case is this one. And then select the aggregate output for this projector. So out of the 4 pieces of that canvas, which one we want? In this case, we want the first one. And for the second projector, we want to find the same output and use a second part of the grid. And on the third one, I've already assigned the output, and I'll select the third part of the grid here. Excellent. So now that this is done, I'd like to test that it works as needed. So how do we do that? If I click here on the output, there's an option to activate the output, which was what we would do if the show was to start. But I can also do it as a preview here. And Pixera brings up a window in my output screen, which I can drag over here. And if I select the preview texture again, we can see the outputs being correctly mapped within our canvas. So this is the left projector, this is the middle one, and this is the right one. And I'm perfectly happy with my setup as it is. Now I can close this window, and we can carry on with adding content to our setup. So I'd like to illustrate how easy it is to add a notch block. So I'll start by going here in the and pressing the Add Compositing Resource button, which gives us the option to add either an Unreal file or a notch block. We'll select the notch block. And I've downloaded some sample notch blocks out of Notch's website, and we'll just go with the neon one. Click open. It'll take a while for it to load. And over here under media, we should be able to find the notch block. So I'll just drag it onto our canvas. And now we need to select the layer that we need. Now, Pixera only sees one layer at a time. So there's no option to change, as far as I know at least, to change the layer later on. You need to do the import process again. But there is a way to go around that, in the sense that you can set up your notch block in a way where you have a master layer that looks at all the other layers underneath. But that's a topic for another tutorial. Let's choose the Neon Particles 2 layer, hit OK. And if I move the timeline further on, the notch block will load. Excellent. We can see it happening. There are no effects showing at the moment, though. And also notice that this is a watermarked notch block, as I don't have the Pro license. But for testing purposes, is more than enough. So if I extend the timeline and click on this layer, we see the normal options like transporting this layer where we want. But also we see the exposed parameters of the notch block itself. the layer actually. So here we see the layer name. These are the exposed parameters that the creator of this block has chosen to expose. So we can choose to change the emission rate of the particles, the glow amount, the alpha, etc. Or we can also animate them using markers in our timeline. But the one that we care about in this case is the video source parameter, which tells this notch block, directs it to the input of the video to apply the IMAG effect on top of. And to assign one, we need to go on the live inputs tab here and find my webcam. And all I have to do is drag it and drop it within this square here. Now we see that we see an error showing that the webcam is not active, but after a while the driver has loaded and we can see myself appearing within the screen. And if I press play, we can see the particles loading and fun stuff happening. In some cases, the camera doesn't work directly. And this could be because if you go here and see the parameters, this option here, show in preview, is not being selected. So if you stumble across issues with that, make sure that this option is selected. If I press play again, see all the particles moving. And as soon as this the timeline bar goes beyond my layer, the notch block is going to be unloaded. And we don't want that. So I'd like to set up a marker here, a queue, right at the end, which would make Pixera jump to the 00 time and start over. And in fact, you can see that there's a line appearing here indicating where the next jump is going to happen. Excellent. You can also look at the parameters here and adjust the time that is given for a notch block to be preloaded. Like a 5,000 millisecond time, means that 5 seconds before these we ask for the notch layer to appear, Pixera will start loading it. You can also choose to preload the effect permanently, and this means that no matter where the timeline is, the notch effect remains loaded, and that this can make it faster. But in the case where you have multiple effects and you're running out of resources, you might need to think twice whether you want that option or not. So it's highly dependent on your use case and applications. In our use case, we're perfectly fine to select that option. Now, because the developers that created this notch block didn't account for the specific aspect ratio that we have, and they went with a standard 16:9 format, we can see that the notch block doesn't cover the whole screen. That's pretty easy to address. We can go on the Effects tab here and look for an effect that handles scale. So just type scale and I'm saying the relevant effects. I'll go with this one and I'll just drag it and drop it within our layer. And now I can adjust the scale and position of this texture dynamically. So I'll start with adjusting the Y scale. Let's try 2. 2.2, 2.25. Perfect. And I'll do the same with the vertical scale. I can also move this, etc. In fact, I can animate these values again. Perfect. And now you see myself covered in neon particles waving at you. And I believe this concludes today's tutorial. I hope you found it interesting and helpful. I'm Aristotle. Thank you for watching.
Hey folks, thanks for watching. As I mentioned earlier, you can get 50% off the Interactive and Immersive HQ Pro. The HQ Pro is the only comprehensive educational resource and community platform of its kind for immersive design, interactive tech, and touch designer professionals. We've got over 200 hours of video courses and trainings, a private community where Matthew Reagan, myself, and our other teachers answer your questions daily, and we've got the first professional certification program for touch designer professionals. We've also just launched the first mini degree program for the interactive tech and immersive media industry. If that sounds interesting, go ahead and click that link in the description so you can learn more about the Interactive and Immersive HQ Pro and join now for 50% off.